Alright, so we're going to try to keep it a little shorter today because I also want to skate, and it's already 3:30, and thanks to daylight savings time, I have less less daylight time left in which I could skate. With any luck, the parking lot will be sufficiently lit up so I could still skate afterwards, because I have been able to do that before. However, there have been also those times where it gets dark randomly, or they forget to turn the lights on or whatever. So we're going to try to make it happen anyway. Of course, I wanted to do the video since I've set the intention to do a video every day between like the 2nd or 3rd and the 11th, because the 11th is the 2-year anniversary of having started the thing. So yeah, I was going to get over here a lot sooner, and then my aunt got in the middle of my plans again and wanted to bring her dog over to play. I was doing good with writing today too. Spent quite a bit of time working on that. Of course, I came up with my title a couple days ago, and yesterday, was it yesterday I came up with the title? I think it was the day before, but I didn't really spend a whole lot of time on it yet at that point. And then, I got as far as writing it down when it first came to mind, which I think was Tuesday, because I'm pretty sure today is Thursday. Yes, today is Thursday. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that came up on Tuesday. And then yesterday I didn't do anything with it other than kind of spend more time just trying to allow for space for it, I guess. Pulled some cards last night from the what was it? The Archetypes deck that I have, and they all seemed very relevant, and I'm going to write them down in the journal later. I just left them all out because it's like I feel like there's so much with them to kind of percolate on, I guess. But one of the cards that came out, and it seemed kind of like it was a transition point, was the Desert card. And it was talking about how while it seems desolate and like there's nothing around, there's still a lot that you can do with like your own energy reserves. There's stuff available, you just have to figure out how to tap into it. And what I took it as is the space that I'm in, this sort of liminal space between what was and what's not yet here. Like part of my step from getting out of the old and into the new, more solidified, is this whole book thing, or short story, whatever. See, I don't know if the title that I came up with is just for like a section of the book or like a whole book in and of itself, and I'm not trying to overthink it, because God knows I'm notorious for that. But I felt like the Desert card was specifically talking about like where I am in between these two different spaces, right? And I don't even know which section would be the old versus what's to come, because like the first part of the first few cards that I pulled out, there was the mask, the village, the self, and I forget what the other one was. But then on the next section after Desert was the crone, the underworld, the starborn, and the eternal child. So it felt kind of like it's like a sort of transitioning between the two spaces, but the Desert was right in the middle, and it's like sort of commanding me to figure out my own way to get the story out of my system and to be able to step more fully into what I want to manifest into my life, right? So, this morning, I woke up and I kept thinking about how I wanted to take a shower. And then the power flickered. And then it came back on. And then it went out and just kind of settled out again. It's like, fuck. But on the other hand, I was thinking, at least I wasn't in the shower when it went out, because that would suck. So, yeah, because, I mean, there's only one bathroom that has a window in it. You know, the other two do not have windows, but, you know, like their bathroom is next to a window. But mine is like down the hallway, so it's like all completely dark. So that would have sucked. But luckily that wasn't a problem, because I hadn't got there yet. But since the power went out, I spent some more time just kind of laying there thinking about things. And I had the idea, I think it kind of was working its way into my awareness yesterday, but I hadn't fully embraced it yet. And then I spent some time thinking about it this morning, and it's like, yeah, that's my path. But so the story that I'm in the process of telling, is, I think the start point is the incident from when I was 35 and the whole bullshit ordeal from high school followed me again, right? So just kind of the last time that I had to face any kind of bullshit from, you know, the rumors and nonsense that had followed me all the way through my grade school years, right? And so, you know, trying to think about like what all was going on in that space, because like what I remember of that time, there's blurry details, but my mom we had gone over to this guy's house, and my mom had connected to his wife. And this was, okay, the guy was somebody that I had gone to high school with, and that my mom had babysat when I was in elementary school. And his brother's one of the good guys. He was not, right? So he was one of the bullies. And my mom had connected with his wife to buy some puzzles that they had for their little girls. They had 3 daughters. And, you know, they weren't real old still, but they had aged out of the puzzles that they were selling. So my mom decided that she was going to get them for my niece. So I don't remember what we had been doing, but we were already out, and we stopped over at their house on the way back home. And I remember being in the driveway, and like I was trying to have very little interactions with the whole situation, just because, you know, didn't like the dude back then. He wasn't even out when we first got there. I think he got there in the middle of us being there. But my mom, of course, trying to be all friendly and chit-chat with his wife and figure out what's going on in his world these days, because she knew him since he was way little and all that bullshit. I got out of the car enough to get to the puzzles and the rack that they were on and load them in the car. And then I think I wasn't like, I didn't want to seem like I was trying to disappear in a hurry, but at the same time I was trying to get her to get the point that I was ready to go. We didn't need chit chat. But the dude got there, and one of the things that I've been kind of sitting with today was how he was always one that could always, turn on the charm, and you knew he's full of bullshit, kind of a thing. And my mom had said that many times about him, that he was very much full of shit. But at the same time, yeah, he still got away with a lot of shit that he shouldn't have, right? Just in life in general, he was one of the bullies and associated with other bullies, and that was pretty much his claim to fame, right? Like yesterday I mentioned, that's probably part of where it came in at. Yesterday I was talking about how when it came to him and the other guy that was the worst bully, you know, this dude was always like the little cartoon dog in Looney Tunes. There's Spike, the big bulldog, who's running around all puffed up all the time and his little swagger, and you know, and then the little one's like the little yippy and obnoxious one that's trying to earn his approval and all that crap. It's like every time I've ever watched that cartoon, it's like I saw Nick and Chris. That's what it was. And Chris being the big puffed up bulldog type that thought he was hot shit and everybody went along with it, and Nick the one that was trying to earn his approval and, you know, get the pat on the back that he did good enough when he was, you know, giving me hell, kind of a thing. So yeah, that's exactly where that came in at yesterday. So I've been working, like that was my start point today. But of course, that was just a very brief moment, right? So, you know, I've mentioned the soul-sucking sneer. That was, I mean, that was what I got from those assholes all throughout my freshman year anyway. And see, sophomore year, Chris had graduated, but Nick was still there. It was his senior year. And I did not see as much of him because, of course, it wasn't as big of a deal to make my life miserable, whereas, you know, Chris had nothing better to do than make my life miserable. So, you know, he could be readily available to show up wherever in the general vicinity that I was at to be a pain in my ass. So it's like, okay, so my start point is this moment where I'm 35 and having to face this shit again. And then, like, the next part of it is, like, a kind of, granted, this is just a very, very rough draft of what I'm doing, but, like, the next point that I went to was Tyler being in the hospital before he even died, right? And I think that's the natural place that it should go, even because Tyler's death was essentially the thing that gave me space to, you know, process through all the bullshit that I just carried my whole life. And, you know, like there was so much of it that I was just trying to, like with the bullies and everything, that I tried to hold on to as a means of trying to force myself to follow through with the suicidal ideation and all that stuff. It's like that was always one of those things that was very much kind of always in my head. And of course, Chris was one of the trigger points when I actually, you know, my actual attempt at doing such. So yeah, but then there was also, like, in high school when my mom was talking to the other lunch ladies about somebody that had committed suicide, and, like, when I looked at her, I just got this really strong sense of, if I went through with it, she would be able to, like, she would love that, because she would get to forever play the victim, right? Because her daughter just, you know, you just never can tell what's going on with somebody, but she also didn't give a shit or try to figure out what was going on with me. It just was very much this sense of, yeah, go ahead and do it, and then I'll have something I can, you know, use to get everybody's sympathy for the rest of my life, kind of a thing. It's like, you know, and it was that moment in high school where I set the intention that I couldn't go through with it no matter how much I wanted to, because I could not let her win like that. For her to forever be able to play the victim for something that I had done, and then my story to never get told, right? It's like, I feel like all along the way I've had this really strong sense that this is exactly what I am here, is to tell this fucking story. And all the painful, icky details for the sake of really coming to terms with the fact, like, that whole bullying thing, right? How deeply even the little things, so like one example of a little thing. So that was the big thing, right? These two douchebags that were always looking at me like they knew something about me, kind of a thing. But one of the little ones, it was just kind of a little triggering thing off of that, was my senior year. I wanted to say it might actually have been the last day of school. Pretty confident it was. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that day I was eating lunch with Paul, and we had like the last lunch, and there weren't very many of us in our group, because normally, like, all of the drumline kids, like, would try to sit together, because that was our group. And so I think there was either one or two other people that had been with us, and they had gone out a different door, but we were going to the band room, and so we were going in the same general direction, but there were two different sets of doors on that side of the lunchroom, and he was going toward the one closest to the band room because he was just going to go straight to band. I was going to the one that was closer to the front doors, the second entrance of the school, and I was going to run to the bathroom real quick. As we were starting to walk, starting to separate to go the different doors, there was a girl, Jenny, who I had been friends with her like in first grade, and then she became one of the mean girls after that. And like, she wouldn't necessarily say much to my face, but she was always talking to the people that would, and that was her main group of friends, was the other mean kids. So she was friends with Tyler and Paul, and they didn't hate me because they actually got to spend some time and get to know me thanks to drumline and all that fun stuff. And we were like super tight because we were okay. So I always have felt like this real strong connection with Tyler and Paul, because 6th grade we were all in the concert band class, like the percussion section. It was our 6th grade year was the last year that the percussion had its own class separate from the band. And like, that was period. Like, all the all the different grades that came through after that all started percussion with the rest of the band, I believe. But back then, we knew each other. We were the youngest of two, and our older siblings were all in the same grade together too. So my brother was with both of their sisters, right? So then there's also the boy-girl combination. It's just, me and my brother were switched compared to where they were at. And so then we had the percussion thing, except for they both had, Tyler, I think, Tyler got into drums when he was little because his dad was always a musician. And Paul, I think, started on like piano, and so he knew keyboards better than I did and all that stuff. And of course, I was brand new to the whole stinking thing, right? But so I was super. I love those two. And like, one of the biggest things with them, since we did have the shared, like the drumline thing that we did together, because, when our school started the winter percussion group, they hadn't, okay, I did band, like marching band, in 8th grade because I found out that I could. So I joined it then, and then I loved it and, did it all through high school. They had gone on to do sports. I think Tyler played football and Paul did cross country. And I don't know what else they did beyond that, but I knew of those two things anyway. But when winter percussion went to start, which was our sophomore year, the band director told them that they could join us for winter percussion, but they would have to join for marching band as well. So sophomore year, they came back to do marching band because they wanted to do winter percussion. Sophomore year wasn't a real great year for winter percussion because we had a ton of upperclassmen that were there that year as well. I wanted to say there were like 7 or 8 seniors that year, and they very much kind of did it as a sort of blow-off thing. 'Cause they just didn't give a shit. It was the first year. Nobody knew what we were doing, right? So we didn't know what we were doing. The percussion instructor was trying hard to figure it out, but then he's also got all these kids that the older ones are basically setting a shitty example to all the younger ones, and nobody's able to take it seriously because they don't take it seriously, and it's just, the show was kind of silly and didn't know what we were doing with anything either. So it was a first thing, right? So it wasn't great. But it was still, it's still kind of fun. It was just kind of really cheesy. But when all of those kids graduated, the drumline instructor took those of us who were coming back for the next year. He took us all aside and was like, which of course this is me, Tyler, Paul, dude I was dating, and a couple other kids. I think there were 7 of us all together that started from the very first season of the winter percussion stuff and stuck with it the entire way through. But he took us all aside and said, I think we can really do something with this, but we have to get all of this last season out of our system, and get rid of all the bad mentality of the upperclassmen that had, done it as a blow-off thing and just a way to kill more time in their last year and all that shit. But he took it seriously. He was excited about it and got us all, able to tune in and be ready to be excited for whatever we had coming with it. And, of course, Tyler and I were made section leaders after all those kids graduated. Tyler was the battery section leader, and I was a pit section leader. And it was one of those things, when I found out that Tyler and Paul were coming back to do band so they could do drumline or do the winter percussion stuff, I had this, my first reaction was a lot of anxiety at the possibility of Paul coming in and deciding to play in the pit, because I knew that if he were to do that, I would miss out on the opportunity to be section leader. I felt like, okay, there's always been that part of me that's like, at some level, I am supposed to be a leader. I know this, right? I don't know why I know this, but I know this, right? And it just, when marching band came up, and then I was there 8th grade, and then freshman year, there was I had been really hopeful that I would get section leader my sophomore year in high school, because I was the one that had been there the longest at that point. That, took it seriously, because there was freshman year. Well, he was a senior that year, so he graduated and he wouldn't have been up there. But, of the kids that I had been in pit with, it's like I was basically there the longest and took it most seriously. And the girl that had been section leader my 8th grade and 9th grade years, I adored her, but she decided for her senior year she wanted to go back to her original instrument, which was like oboe, I think. And so she was leaving. So I got real hopeful that there was a chance that I might be able to be the section leader, right? And then her friend who, her friend who had been homeschooled and decided to finish her senior year out in public school, ended up joining marching band. And since she was such good friends with the section leader before, she got it over me in spite of the fact that she was brand new to the whole thing. And I wanted to hate her. I really wanted to hate her when she got there, because, as far as I could tell, she took it from me, right? And it's like I had this thing that I'd been doing and it was supposed to be mine, and then she showed up and got it ahead of me just because she was older and friends with the other girl. It's like, screw you, man. And I tried hard to do the mean girl thing, and I couldn't, because she was just one of those people that was so nice and likable. It's like, shit. So then I ended up loving her anyway. But, those two were included in the upperclassmen that had started the drumline thing out, that first year. They were both there too, but they were very much with the ones that didn't give a shit, because, they didn't take it seriously and nobody really knew what was going on anyway. So just kind of was what it was. But anyway, so once Tyler and Paul are coming, and I know Paul had the piano experience and was good on keyboards and stuff. It's like I just had that fear that he was going to decide to basically come in and take it, when I knew it's like everything in me knows I'm supposed to be a leader at some sort of level, and it's like I'm being blocked from it. But then he did not. He and Tyler both went in and played quads together. So, thank God. Right? But so there was always that thing too. So, Paul was the backup to Tyler. But Tyler got the battery section leader role, and then I got pit section leader. And then so once the drumline instructor took us aside and said, I really think we can do something good with this, but we got to get all of that out of our system. Everything that just happened, we can clear all that out. Forget all about that. We can do something with this. And, our second year with the winter percussion program at our school, we won our school's first ever state championship, sports, music, anything. We were the first. And the sports were very pissy about that. And then the next year we didn't get the state championship, but we had a bigger thing in mind for that one anyway, so we weren't really focused on the state stuff at that point. So that one was, we knew we were going to, was it Winter Guard Internationals, and so that was kind of more of our focus. But yeah, anyway, so all those Tyler and Paul connections. So going back to the last day of school, right? Mean girl Jenny is standing there. I'm pretty sure it was Paul that I was talking to, and he started walking toward the doors that were closer to the band room, and I was walking closer to the doors that were closer to the front doors. And she just looked at him and said, what are you doing? And looked at me like I was the problem, and why the fuck was he talking to me? He was not supposed to associate with me. And he just shrugged it off and said, nah, she's cool, and like kept walking. You know, it's like that little moment, right? So for him, it was just kind of a little blip. He probably, if it was in fact him and not Tyler, because I've gone back and forth on that, but I'm pretty sure it was Paul. You know, so Paul's still around, so I could ask him about that, but I don't think he'd remember it because it wasn't a big deal to him, right? You know, me on the other hand, on my way to the bathroom, you know, of course I go into the stall and like everything in me is just like a raw nerve again, because here's this thing that just happened, and we both, you know, all three of us, I think, knew what she was talking about. And, you know, as far as that whole sort of intonation of why the fuck are you being seen with her kind of a thing. And then, you know, my friend chose to, you know, maintain that, you know, it was okay to be my friend kind of a thing, right? But then, you know, I go into the bathroom stall and like everything in me was just like crumbling. And I thought very seriously about leaving home on what I'm pretty sure was the last day of school, as a means of trying to end it, because it was still following me, right? That whole, all the bullshit. So, yeah. But it's like, that was one of those things, you know, because of course, since the bathroom was so close to the band room, like the passing periods were 5 minutes, and then there was a warning bell and another 2 minutes after that. So it didn't take that long to go into the bathroom and have the moment of panic and concern about whether I was going to go home and end it instead of going to the next class, because of, you know, because of the stupid thing that happened at the very end of the fucking lunch period. Like, lunch was over, we were walking out, and then this thing happens, you know. And that, of course, was before the last class of the day, which was band, and we weren't going to have to do anything because, you know, for seniors it was a blow-off class. So yeah, anyway, since there was more time, you know, okay, I'm pretty sure this was that day as well. I went into the band room, and of course we had gotten, or our school had gotten, actual marimbas my junior and senior year, right? Or the junior year is when we got them, and that, like, as soon as we got the marimbas, it's like I didn't want to play anything else. It's like, this is what I'm meant for right here, because the you know, the xylophone was loud and bitey sounding, and I don't like that. I was not somebody that ever liked drawing attention to myself. And then, you know, that was the question as far as when I ended up as section leader. It was kind of just assumed that I was going to take those parts, and I was just like, nope. I don't want that part. I want the marimba. You know, so the guy that was kind of my backup, he was a couple years younger than me, but, you know, I always thought he was really good too. I thought he was like a really good player, and that I just really sucked. So it's like, he can have the loud stuff. He knows, like, he plays confidently, all that stuff. He can handle those. And, you know, since I was there more for the leadership end of things rather than the music side of things, because my life was telling me that I did not have talent as far as the music side of things went. Like, that wasn't my thing, right? So it's like everybody else was good, and I just happened to be there. But I was okay leader, so they let me stay, right? That was my perception. But anyway, I think one of the things that, you know, I've talked about this on here before too, is after Tyler's funeral, the battery instructor was unable to make it to the funeral. The pit instructor didn't give a shit. He wasn't going to be there. But the battery instructor, he loved us. And it was important to him to come for the funeral, but he couldn't make it there because he had something else going on, but he was available later in the evening. So he asked if everybody, all the drumline kids wanted to get together for drinks in Tyler's honor after. And so, yeah, so that evening we went out together, right? And I'm gonna do it again, damn it. These fucking cars, man, they're so loud. Anyway, so we had eaten inside and we were getting ready to go outside to the patio and just finish out there. And people were drinking, but it wasn't really a huge thing. We just wanted to go outside because it was nice. We were done eating. So we were getting out of the way. But at one point, like, we were taking pictures together, I think, but Matt came over to me and he said that was the thing that was really special about that group. He said it's not that any of us were really great players, he said, but we all played our parts and we played them well, and we played them well together. It's like, what? It's like, what do you mean nobody was a stellar player at this thing? I thought everybody was great and I sucked. And part of the reason I thought I sucked was, the pit section leader that didn't give a shit about, coming back around to check in with any of us. Going into the last weekend. Okay, so I think it was the state contest. One of the judges had made a comment about how the show would be better if it was flipped, right? So, like, of course, there's marching, so there's a whole show that's been going on this one way. And then, the judge makes a comment about it would be better if the show was flipped, right? So, like, completely flipped. And so the week we were getting ready for the WGI championship stuff, we flipped the whole damn show, right? So luckily the music didn't change much. Mainly it was just, practicing the same music, but putting the whole, all the battery guys and girls had to switch everything up. More that was the biggest thing, right? And the rest of it was mostly the same, except this one little piece. So, and this was a big part of why I kind of solidified the idea of I was just not that good of a player. So, the pit instructor, dude named Jim, he decided, he had tried before. My part, there was like, I wanted to say it was like a 16th note that was not in the place he wanted it to be in. And he had tried to get me to shift it a few other times, and I always struggled with trying to make sense of what he was telling me. But he decided, since the battery was changing everything, that he was going to try to get me to change this one little blip. And what felt like was happening for me, he would sing the part to me and then I would play the part. And I was pretty sure I was playing the part like he was singing it. But he kept getting really frustrated because, he was telling me that, that wasn't, and it just kept kept picking at this one little thing, this one questionable little freaking 16th note or whatever. And it got to a point, I was so frustrated that by the time, we took a break after he'd been trying to get me to switch it for 10 minutes, we were going back and forth trying to fix this thing, and I just could not get it. And we took a break, and I walked over to the guy I was dating at the time. I said, I don't know for sure. I said, but what it feels like is he's singing to me what I'm already playing, but not, like he's intending for me to get the hint that this one little spot's, or this one little thing's supposed to be shifted over. But when he sings it back like I'm singing, or like I'm playing it, rather than how he wants it played. I said, I said, I'm not sure. I said, I just feel like I'm just not getting this at all. And I feel really stupid. I said, but it feels like I'm playing what he's singing to me. And maybe he's just, when he goes to, like, because there were a couple times, like, I kind of caught where he was like, like he wasn't sure that he was doing it right. But it was like just this one little blip, but I was so frustrated. And it was kind of a rough night anyway, because, practice, I mean, we're trying to change the whole fucking show. But, that was one of the things that Jason shared at the memorial we had afterwards, because, of course, we're sharing our little moments of Tyler. And the one Jason shared was, we'd been doing this practice. Practice went over, and we'd already gone over like an hour or something, and parents were there and they were frustrated and waiting, and we were still still had school to go to the next day, and we were all frustrated and tired. And Jason made a comment about, okay, he said, just one more time, we needed to run it just one more time. And Tyler stopped him and said, no, we are not going to run this any longer. We're already, however long after practice, we still have homework to do when we get home, and we're tired, and no, we're not going to keep going. And he said it was one of those things that Tyler stood up for the whole group. He fully respected it. That was the end of practice. There was no more one last time. Tyler put his foot down, and we all went home, and it was a rough night. Right? But yeah, that was Jason's little thing that he shared. But yeah, for just the conversations we had, like when Matt shared that part about, it's not that any of us was really that great of a player. It's like, what are you talking about? Everybody was better than me. I was pretty confident of it. And now you're telling me that maybe I wasn't so bad after all? What the fuck? So, yeah, that was rough. But yeah, that whole deal with Jim, that was a big part of why, I was very much solidified on the path that I'm not good at this, so I don't know why I'm still doing this, right? However, at least it was the end of the fucking season, so, and, Jim finally gave up on it after we'd been going back and forth with it for several minutes, and he could tell I was getting frustrated. But honestly, with his personality type, I'd say he kind of thrives. I'm confident he's one of those, like the narcissistic types, that thrives on the frustration. And with what Jason was saying about how things kind of fell apart after, like, the next season and all that stuff, and a whole bunch of backstabbing on that end, I'm confident he too was one of those narcissistic elements that, was feeding on the fact that I was struggling so much. But yeah, anyway, he at least had some nice things to say in the recommendation letter he wrote for me, so there was that. And like one of the things he said when we were talking, like one of the last conversations we had, he said something about I was the type of person that he said he felt like he could just entrust me with the Hope Diamond and count on me to have it, and not probably be like super anxious and not sure, or not trying to lose it and everything. But he said, he always felt that I was the kind of person that he could trust with something like that, and I would handle it. And it's like, yeah, well, he's also one of those that, you know, kind of picks at you. So, yeah, who knows? Anyway, the right combination of energies, I'd say, went into that whole drumline experience. And yeah. But, my hand's getting cold. So, I'll probably write about that stuff too. That's kind of been like the big thing, is just like trying to organize my thoughts. And this gives me space to organize my thoughts a little more. And then, you know, this will give me more to write about tonight and tomorrow, and all that fun stuff. But then also have the space to it's because it's still the fucking hard stuff, right? You know, and I was thinking about that when I was writing the little story about the thing when I was 35, and how this stupid bullshit came back around, right? Came back up when I was 35, which is several years after I graduated high school, right? So, yeah, so, when I was thinking about it today, like, because I was trying to say things without expressly saying names and whatnot, and I sat with the thought for a little bit, and it's like, you know what, I think I'm not going to say last names, but I'm definitely going to say first names. And, you know, the people who were so shady, it's like part of the reason that bullying is able to be as prevalent as it is because the bullies aren't being held accountable, right? And, you know, they get to be, okay, like for Chris and Nick, one of the things that I've thought for them too is how it's kind of a sort of karma that they each have 3 daughters, right? So Chris has an older daughter, but then he has triplets, and there are 2 girls and a boy. And at the funeral, at his mom's funeral, when my mom was talking to his wife, she blatantly said the boy was her favorite, right? Like, she just flat out said that. And I remember my mom made a comment about how, you know, she was kind of appalled that somebody would actually admit to that. It's like, but you've had your favorites too, you just wouldn't own up to it. But everybody else would have known, right? So it's like, just because you don't say it doesn't mean it's not known. So just because she did say it, I mean, that's not going to be fun for the daughters on that end, knowing that their mom prefers the boy over them. You know, that's kind of a bitch thing anyway, but whatever. But on the other end of it, it's like, each one of these dudes that was very much a key component in my experience of having been bullied has 3 daughters. And I am confident that they've never felt any guilt about the shit that they said or did toward me. And I feel like in the balancing of karma, it would make sense if at least one of their 3 daughters had some sort of experience with a bully or worse because of what their fathers set into motion by always being mean to me, right? So hopefully not worse, but, you know, just via them putting out so much negative for one person, it's like I absolutely have never and will never wish anything on those girls. But that said, I do believe that, you know, karma is paying attention, you know, and was always paying attention. So whatever comes their way because of their father's wrongdoing is unfortunate. And I don't think their fathers would really have the awareness, shy of something coming up on that end, of even thinking that there was anything wrong with what they did, or that what they did was in any way connected to anything that potentially comes up for their daughters, right? So, I don't know. But yeah, that's one of those things. It's just like, I feel sorry for all 6 of the girls that, because their fathers are as they were, right? That said, I feel like I don't know that my dad was a pain in the butt to anybody in particular in school or anything, but I know he definitely has been one of my bullies as well. But everything is connected, right? So whatever, so there's got to be something that, I don't know. Anyway, but I was thinking about, like, that's the biggest thing is, without the bullies ever being called out and made accountable for anything, they would just deny it anyway, right? And the system that allows for the bullies to deny it and get away with it, especially like fucking how many people have been, how many girls have been raped by dudes that end up getting off easy because of who their parents are or something stupid, right? Those sorts of things. It's like the reason that kind of stuff continues is because there's no consequences. There's not adequate consequences. So yeah, I feel like it is important to use their first names. And beyond that, like everybody, our school wasn't huge. My graduating class, granted it was the smallest one in like several years either side of it, my graduating class had 176 people in it. Like all the classes around that, I don't know for how long, were like 200 something. But that was absolutely like the last small one like that. But again, I don't know how many there were beyond, like before that, so if you're thinking, okay, so freshman, sophomore, senior high school, roughly 200 people per class, that's like 800 people in the system, right? Or in the high school at that point in time. So those people will probably easily know who any of the people that I talk about are. And if that's the extent of the balancing that comes up because of what I'm having to write, and this is stuff that for the past several years I have been working through this, because Tyler died in 2018 and it was his death, his death was the thing that freed me to start putting down some of the baggage, basically, because I was terrified of death because my great grandfather died when I was 7 and then everything went to hell. And my grandfather was so obsessive about not dying, but he also didn't live, but he was so obsessed about not dying that we mourned his death for like 33 years. So yeah, so when Tyler died, I finally had the space where it's like, whatever is on the other side of death, he already knows anything that there is that I would have tried to hide or deny beforehand. So because of that, it gave me space to start, I started writing him letters and processing through a bunch of the stuff that I'd never been able to look at before because because I just thought I was doomed to have to carry it by myself forever anyway, right? Nobody was, it's like, to be one of the kids who so much of the popular kids are making fun of, you end up being a sort of pariah anyway and don't have a whole lot of friends otherwise, because they don't want to get lumped in with the assholes that are bullying you because you're getting bullied, right? So, like in that moment of that last day of school or whatever, where Jenny looked at Paul and said, "What are you doing?" and looked at me and he said, nah, she's cool. That was like one of those things. It was like, it was greatly relieving for me in that moment that he, was directly facing this moment of condemnation from one of the cool kids that he was associated with. And, she's basically trying to rebuke him for spending any time with me because rumors. And, he was like, eh. But at the same time, I still had to carry that burden of being the pariah in that moment, and knowing that this exchange is all about me anyway. So it's like, just because he brushed her off in that moment, it's like, it didn't mean it went away for me. That was still something that I had to deal with, right? And it was very difficult for me not to deal with it by cutting out from the last class of the day, the last class of my senior year, to go home and try to kill myself, right? So that was my struggle at that point in time. And it was all just this fleeting moment. We had been having a good conversation. We were laughing and joking the entire lunch period. And then this just brief moment at the end of it, when we're going our separate ways, and I was ready to go home and finish it. So, yeah. I don't think I finished that point. When I went to the band room, the marimba, because I love my marimbas, there was still time before class started. And so I was just kind of standing, like, I was kind of like this. Just that frustration, the sorrow, anger. Like the way I've kind of explained it when I've talked about it before was like, I ended up with one of the mallets in my hand. I had a couple of mallets in my hand, and I was just kind of standing aimlessly behind the marimba because I wasn't going to be playing it for class or anything. But it was like, honestly, in hindsight, it has felt like it was sort of a call for help. Because I kind of felt just like this ready to disappear into myself thing again. And like, I just struck like a random note on the low end of the keyboard and just stood there listening to the vibrations of it. And like, suddenly Tyler was there, right? And he ended up with, he'd grabbed a couple mallets from one of the nearby keyboards, and suddenly, he hit like the same note that I hit. And then I looked up and, we made eye contact, and then it kind of became this little challenge and this little game where, suddenly I'm just like hitting random notes, and he's trying to mimic back everything I do from the opposite side of the keyboard, which I feel, I feel like that because, of course, it's a mirror image, right? We're standing across from each other doing the same thing, but he's doing it the opposite of what I was doing it. So this is why I'm still doing these videos every day while I'm in this writing process, is because these points, so like, I didn't think about it being a mirror sort of thing. And I've talked about Tyler as my drumline counterpart frequently because, that's he was the battery captain, I was the pit captain, and that was, it's like there were a lot of things about us that were similar and yet also opposite, like the fact that his sister and my brother were both in the same class, or the fact that we were in the same class and he was the brother and I was the sister of our parents' kids, right? So it's just like these little opposite things. So I always just kind of referred to him as my drumline counterpart, but it's like even that making sense at like a much more extensive level than I even was able to think of it before. But yeah, like going back to that point of, like I've had lots of good things to say about Tyler on here because that dude, like I think there was a ton of us that had him on a pedestal, and he was kind of always the sort of this is probably going to sound silly, the Jesus amongst us, right? Because he had made space for everybody. It was okay for all of us to be who we were when we were with him. And, like the first time we went out for awards, because we were the section leaders, so our junior year, I was really nervous because I was doing this thing in front of a bunch of people and I didn't like that idea. And on the other hand, he was he's a big goof. He was used to people being aware of him and seeing him, and he was always pretty popular with everybody. So when I'm like this ball of nerves and I'm really anxious about going down going out for awards, I was just like, how did I say it? I said something about I don't even remember what I said. Basically, trying to check, or I said something I think about don't let me do anything stupid, and he was just like, I got you. It was one of those things, and I just had this like mental image of like me tripping and falling in front of this group of people, and then he gets this like big dramatic trip and falls too, even though his was totally intentional and mine wasn't. And it's just like, as soon as he said I got you, it's like this image flashed to mine, and like, I kind of laughed at it, but at the same time, it's like I knew that if anything stupid happened, he would have my back, right? So it's just like, okay. But then it ended up being a thing where it wasn't even an issue. And even if I had done anything stupid on that end, okay, so our costumes were kind of sketchy. So we had like these black band pants, and then we had these brightly colored turtlenecks, and over the turtleneck, or not turtlenecks, tank tops. Over the tank tops, we had black turtlenecks. And part of the show, like, we all ended up with just like the tank tops at some point in time. But, like at the start of it, it's like this whole shadow thing. And, so we had and like these black hoods too. And then of course we're fucking walking around in the hallways like a bunch of shadows, and everybody's like, because it's kind of like contrary to the hoods and things of basically somebody made the association of like reverse KKK kind of a thing. It's like, ooh, that's kind of sketchy to think of it like that. No, it's one of those things. It's like, we don't want to like just. We were grateful for the times because that was like the first season we had the black hoods, and once they came off, they never went back on, I don't think. I mean, I know they didn't for the show, but like the whole point was to reveal the colors, right? To, you know, reveal what's underneath all the shadows, all the darkness. And like, even thinking about it at this level, it's like, this is my life. Like, even back then, like the stories that we were telling was basically the sort of, you know, it's like I can put my whole life in what was going on. Because like the first one was, the show was Devolution, right? So like evolution, but with a D. So like we're doing it in reverse kind of a thing. Or maybe not, but yeah. But that was still like, the first was Devolution and Awakening, and then the next year was Devolution, The Struggle for Self. And of course we were doing music of Tool and David Gillingham. But, you know, everybody loved the whole Tool association because Tool. And, you know, we're freaking doing drumline shows with Tool music. That's awesome. But, like, and even, like, with the words of some of the songs, it's like, huh. It's like, this is another layer of all of this. So it's like, no wonder the universe put me in that space at that time, so I can make sense of all of these things and tell the story with all of these different points, right? That the point of my YouTube channel has been me making sense of things and unpacking more and more of it, and then seeing these connections at this even deeper level. It's like, huh, there's just so much here. You know, and another one more way at how metal music had, you know, was always there saving my life along the way. So yeah, anyway, I'm at an hour and 6 minutes. I would still kind of like to go skate, and I think I feel like that's a pretty solid video today. Actually had more that came together, and I feel like is, you know, like I said, I feel like the purpose of me doing the daily videos is to make sense of things together more quickly, right? So I spend so much time writing, and then I do a video and talk my way through some stuff, make some other, or bring some other things into approximate place of where they exist in the storytelling in my brain that I'm meant to be storytelling, not in my brain. And then, you know, bringing it together more cohesively, right? So like, this is an important part of it too. So I'm glad I decided to do the daily thing. And yeah, and like I said, I'm gonna wrap it up and maybe go skate some of it out of my system, and maybe not. Maybe I'll just go straight to the writing. But see, I feel like skating is so helpful in allowing my brain to wander without my body in the way. Because my body's in the middle of doing something else, so, you know, I can think about whatever else and make sense of other things, right? Or piece together things even slightly differently, or whatever. Anyway, I'm wrapping it up. As always, I appreciate you. Until the next time, see ya.